Hello, everyone. Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me back in your virtual space here in Arizona and for inviting me to do this workshop. I had a great time doing the keynote last Friday with you, talking about open education, and it is my pleasure to be back here again at the 2021 Arizona Regional OER Conference, and this time to talk more specifically about renewable assignments. And as you can see, the title of my workshop, it is Creating Renewable Assignments to Transform the Teaching and Learning Environments in Support of Social Justice and Student Success. And so as was introduced, my name is Shinta Hernandez, and I am the Department Chair of Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminal Justice at Montgomery College in Montgomery County, Maryland. And for those of you who may not know where that is, we are located right outside of Washington, D.C., not too far from it. And so the first part of this workshop is a brief 15 to 20 minute presentation that I'm going to give you. It is designed to be interactive, so there will be some opportunities, quick opportunities for you to chime in through some polling. In fact, you can see at the top there at the top of the slide, as well as in the chat, if you can go to menti.com right now and enter the code 6164811. The presentation will actually pop up on your device, and then you can follow along that way. Now, if you're unable to do the poll that way, that's okay. When the poll questions pop up, you can enter your responses in the chat. So either way, you'll get an opportunity to contribute and chime in. All right, so one more housekeeping here is that my Twitter handle is at the bottom right of the slide. It is at Prof Hernandez2, as in the number 2. So if you are interested in tweeting this live, please go right ahead and don't forget to use the hashtag OERZona2021 so that our colleagues from all around the country and all around the world can follow along with what's going on with this event of ours. Okay, so to me, it's always important that whenever we're in a public space like this, that we do a land acknowledgement. So I'd first like to begin by acknowledging the Piscataway people, traditional custodians of the land on which I reside in Maryland. And I also want to acknowledge the 22 Native nations that have inhabited the land on which you all gather in Arizona. Okay, so now to give you a quick sense of what you'll do this afternoon, let me give you a rundown of what I'll cover today. So I want to talk about the open education paradigm, very similar to what I covered in the keynote last week, but this offers us all a level playing field of knowledge before I go into a deeper dive into what renewable assignments are and why it's so important. And then I want to focus today the presentation on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Open Pedagogy Faculty Fellowship. I know that's a mouthful. I'm going to go into the framework specifically. And then we'll go into breakout sessions, and you'll be given an opportunity to create a renewable assignment of your own using this framework. And then I'd like for us to conclude by going over what some of you may have done in your breakouts. What are some takeaways? What are some general challenges you foresee happening as you implement and incorporate open pedagogy into your courses? And then in the end, after the report out, we can answer questions, or I can answer questions. You can make comments. I'm also happy to chat by email at a later date if I can address all of the questions this afternoon. All right, so if you were at my keynote last week, I do, some of this may seem familiar, but I also want to talk about it again because number one, it's always nice to have a refresher for all of us. It was last Friday and a lot of things have happened in our lives since Friday, so a refresher is nice. But also number two, I want to make sure that those who did not attend the keynote have the same information as those who did. And that way it allows us, all of us, to move together more effectively, moving forward into the rest of the presentation and breakouts. So let me first start off with the first poll question I have here, which is, what is your official role at the institution? I always like to do a scan of who's out there. Go ahead, I'll give you about a minute to answer this. This is excellent. Terrific, I think. Okay, we're still answering. Perfect. All right, so as you're all still answering the question, it does seem like overwhelmingly we have full-time faculty as the majority. some part-time faculty, some librarians, instructional designers, keeps going up. There you go. College administrator, student. This is wonderful. All right. And like I said before, if you are unable to go to Menti to do this way, you can also put in your chat, you can answer the question in the chat as well. Okay, terrific. This gives me a sense of who's out there. Regardless of whether this is virtual or not, these are definitely questions I would have asked if this were in person, because it's always nice to know what all of our backgrounds are. And that instructional designer percentage keeps going up. That's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. And that next question is this. What is your level of knowledge of renewable assignments? So I've given you 4 categories there. I'll give you about a minute. Okay, this is a nice mix of our span of knowledge here. So we've got predominantly those with basic knowledge, some with intermediate, a bigger chunk with absolutely no knowledge of renewable assignments. So you've definitely come to the right place because you will certainly learn what it is and why it's important, and then you'll get a chance to actually create one yourself. Okay, terrific. Thank you. Oh, and the percentage keeps going up. All right, thank you so much. And this is my last poll question for you. What impact will open pedagogy have on you, your students, your colleagues, your institution, your state, etc.? Now, there are no multiple choice questions. Here you get an opportunity to, I hope, enter some phrases, some words, maybe a couple of sentences. And I also want to let you know that you don't have to choose all of those entities. You can choose one, you can choose a couple, whatever you'd like, but I'll give you a minute to do that. Trim the fat. I like that. Accessibility for all, yes. Collaboration, absolutely. Equity, dollar bills, yes. We're going to talk about those dollar bills in a second. It can build up pool of knowledge, freely available, exactly. Help provide education to a broader audience. Relevance to students, student voice embedded in learning, absolutely. Having them be partners in the work, right? Investment by students in their own learning, cultivating interest. It will show the value of students, of assignments to my students, allow sharing across classes. True peer engagement. Yes, love that. I'll give you some more time. Okay. So based on these responses, it is implying to me that you definitely know what open pedagogy is, or at least you know what open pedagogy can do for us, particularly the positive impacts of open pedagogy on any of these entities. All right, terrific. Thank you for that. Thank you for engaging me in this way. So I will now move on. I just want to make sure that no one else is chiming in. I will now move on to the next slide. All right, so as I mentioned before, I want to make sure that everyone's got leveled knowledge of the various concepts and terms that are going to be mentioned during this workshop presentation. So I've created this diagram. Some of you have seen it before, and I'm hoping that this diagram will offer some clarity for any of you who might need it. Some of you may already know all the differences. But let's just go from top to bottom. So here at the top of the diagram is open education. And essentially, this is the teaching and learning framework that is centered on accessibility, affordability, equity, inclusion, innovation, and opportunity. And then in the middle of the diagram, we have open pedagogy, which includes the teaching and learning strategies by which educators meet those number of parameters I mentioned in the framework. And we do this through things like curriculum redesign, student engagement practices. We do it through assessment, through technology. And then now open educational resources, or OERs, are located at the bottom of the diagram on purpose. because it really symbolizes that these are the efforts that are delivered at the ground level and on the front line, right? We have quote unquote, frontline workers, and those are our instructors, our librarians, and they're the ones who have the connection to the direct connection to the students, the direct communication to students on what OERs are and how they can get our students to engage. And so OERs are those, by definition, the specific applications by which educators like ourselves can deliver open pedagogy. And some examples of OERs include what I've written down there: renewable assignments, open textbooks, streaming videos, learning modules, and open access journals. And like I said, for the purpose of this particular workshop, we're going to focus on renewable assignments. Okay. So now let's just quickly examine what renewable assignments are. So many of you might know the name David Wiley, well-known scholar in this field, and he defines renewable assignments as those that add value to a student's world, live outside of the boundaries and beyond a duration of the course, and are likely to have a lasting impact. And the opposite of renewable assignments are what we call disposable assignments. Now, these are those traditional assignments that you and I probably grew up doing during our own college years. Do you remember doing that research paper that asked students to do research on say, a social issue, but there was no additional direction from the instructor to do anything about that social issue outside of just simply researching about it? And then the assignment just ended there, or at least for me, it did. The student does it, the instructor grades it, and then the student throws it away, and sometimes literally throws it away. And trust me when I say this, that I was also guilty of assigning disposable assignments many, many, many years ago, until I realized that these assignments lacked depth in a student's learning experience. So the renewable assignments add deeper value to our students' learning experience, because what it does is it engages our students and puts them in the center of their own learning process. And also, a very important component to renewable assignments is that these assignments are openly licensed so that they can be publicly shared with the global community and possibly later on be remixed and adapted. And many of you know Creative Commons, which is the public copyright licensing that allows for free distribution of these materials. Later on, you can go to this website. Thank you for putting that into the chat. And you can see how relatively easy it is to figure out which type of license fits your needs, because they've really made it simpler for us in terms of, what is it that you want students to get out of? What is it that you want other educators to get out of this? How much leeway do you want additional adopters to have of your assignments? So go to that website when you can. You'll get a chance to do that also during your breakout session. And you can see for sure how relatively easy it is to decide which license fits your needs. Okay, so now let me start talking to you about this fellowship that mouthful fellowship. But before I do that, someone mentioned in the answer to the question of what impact will open pedagogy have, and we're talking about dollar savings, right? So let me first share with you that Montgomery College, like many of your institutions, we've been a player in the OER world for quite some time, and so we care deeply about increasing college affordability for our students, all the while maintaining academic excellence and high rigor in our materials and in our teaching and learning. When we, Montgomery College, received an Achieving the Dream grant several years ago to create a Z degree, we were able to launch this work, and we have been able to sustain it. And we've been able to save our students $7.3 million by offering Z courses and Z degree programs like General Studies Z degree. We also have a Criminal Justice Z degree. And that Z, as some of you know, it stands for Zero Cost Textbooks and Course Materials. All right, so that's that first column, if you will, or that first arrow. Now, this is all great news, right? But we as educators, we know that we also care just as deeply about the impact of student learning. And that's the second arrow I want to talk about. So what we did is we sought out data to compare students who took Z courses versus those who took non-Z. And what did we find? We found that our Z students did just as well, or in some cases even better than the non-Z students. And that's what educators really want to hear. But also please understand that just like with any education research or any research in general, that this is a correlation, not a causation. But it is still good to know that we do have equal or greater student success in our Z courses. Now, we didn't stop there at Montgomery College. We took this open pedagogy journey one step further, and so I want to bring you to the third arrow. We wanted open pedagogy to impact our students and our communities through a social justice lens. So 3 years ago, to give you a backstory, we at Montgomery College came up with the conceptual framework on which this fellowship is based, which is a set of 17 goals that the United Nations wants the world to address by the year 2030. And these goals are designed to maintain and sustain global justice. And you can see the 17 goals there in that colorful periodic table format that's on the right side of the slide. And this is the framework we're going to talk about during our breakout sessions. So you'll get to know more intimately what these 17 goals are. And the fellowship uses open pedagogy, specifically renewable assignments, to put the students at the center of their learning process. And it makes them, as I mentioned earlier, makes them agents of change in their communities. It gets them out there into the communities. And I'm going to sound cliche, but to make the world a better place. And essentially, that's really what we want at the end of each and every day. So now I want to share with you quickly how this fellowship has grown in just a short period of time. So I had mentioned that we started this 3 summers ago, and it was just Montgomery College faculty at the time. We had 15 fellows who were grouped into 7 interdisciplinary teams, and the charge was for them to create interdisciplinary renewable assignments. And if you go down the column a bit, you'll see that nearly 600 students did these assignments. And what that means is that nearly 600 students engaged in their communities in different ways through their open pedagogy projects. Now, second column there, you see that we added Kwantlen Polytechnic University as a partner in this work. And you see the growth going a little bit down in that column, a little over 700 students engage in their communities. So you can see more and more students engaging and improving the world through these United Nations goals. And then excitingly, just last summer, we added Maricopa Community Colleges. And so we were thrilled at the partnerships, but also look at the growth. We had 41 fellows grouped into 16 interdisciplinary teams. And then look at the number at the bottom, the number of students, over 1,600 students engaged in these assignments, in the open pedagogy work, and just helped the world be a better place for all of us. And then a treat for you, in years past, we had faculty and students co-present on their projects in different ways, but this year we have 13 students with their faculty in this Arizona Regional OER conference. There's a showcase almost immediately right after my workshop is over. There is another one next Friday, February 19th, and again, Friday, February 26th. So please, if you want to hear what the students have to say and what they want to show you, please sign up and please join us during those showcases. Okay, so I would like to share with you the professional learning process. And just real quick, but what I really want to tell you is this is a very time-consuming process, as anything that is innovative and good should be. It is actually a year-long process, mainly for the leadership team. And now let me tell you how that's so. Going from left to right, the left arrow where it says call for applications. This is an interdisciplinary and interinstitutional fellowship, as I've mentioned before over and over again, because for us, collaborating across disciplines and collaborating across institutions and maximizing student impact are the most important goals for us. So the call for applications go out during Open Education Week, which is every year, which is early March. And for that, it's just a couple weeks from now. And decisions are made soon after. And then fellows who are selected are notified. And then that orange arrow there tells you that they have required meetings over the summer in which they engage in some intense professional development, including meeting with their team members for some, again, intense brainstorming and working toward the creation of 3 interdisciplinary renewable assignments. So now we get into the yellow, where we tell them that the assignments get deployed in the fall semester. And this is also when the students, the pink arrow, they become agents of change in their communities. They do the work, do the assignments through this open pedagogy framework during the fall semester. And then the light blue arrow there, it happens at the end of the semester. What happens, reflection always happens, should happen all the time. But at the end of the semester, we ask that the faculty reflect on what worked and what did not work. And in addition to that, they provide with us or provide to us a student video that they produce that allows us to see what really went on and how did it go in their courses with these assignments. And then the gray arrow at the far left is what happens in February, like what I was just telling you about. The month before Open Education Week, we have this faculty student showcase. And as you can see through the timeline, it goes from March to February of the following year. So it really is, particularly for the leadership team, a year-long professional learning process. And the hope is always that even if the fellowship is over, that the faculty fellows and students continue to apply some of the things that they learned through this fellowship moving forward. And to give you a quick sense of how holistic this fellowship is, but not just how the fellowship is holistic, but that the general work of open education and open pedagogy is holistic, I've created this diagram to show who all of our players are. We have included librarians, instructional designers, institutional leaders, full-time faculty, part-time faculty, student affairs staff, the grants office, our community members. They all play critical roles in helping to advance this work, regardless of title, regardless of how long they've been at the institution. Everybody has an opportunity to contribute. For us, bridging these boundaries and connecting in meaningful ways is incredibly important if we want to see and we want to sustain student success. Now, the hard work of our faculty and students certainly paid off. We are humbled to announce that we were awarded the Open Pedagogy Award for Excellence by Open Education Global, OE Global, just a couple months ago, November of 2020. And only one institution actually across the globe receives this type of award each year. So we were, of course, like I said, honored and humbled. If your institution is interested in partnering with us or you simply want to learn more about the fellowship, I welcome you to visit the website that is at the very bottom of this slide. And I'm sure similarly, you can find the similar information on the KPU and Maricopa pages. And thank you so much, Sarah, for putting that into the chat, the website. I appreciate that. All right. So let me now do some showcasing for you, since that is one of the themes of this conference. I want to turn to, I'm going to just show you two sets. I wish I could show you all. But this first set that I want to show is from a previous cohort. It's actually from our very first cohort when it was just Montgomery College faculty. And my hope is that when I show you these examples, that it might give you some ideas when you get into your breakout rooms to create your own renewable assignment. Perhaps you can gather some ideas from here. I apologize that the font is small. I do have the website at the bottom of this slide if you'd like to take a look at these documents in a more legible way. I'm going to kind of go backwards as I talk about this assignment. At the bottom of the assignment, you see the Creative Commons license, right, which shows that this is openly licensed and it allows for copying and distribution in any format as long as there is attribution to the two creators. Okay, so that was their decision to do it this way. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the top of the assignment. This assignment was done by a Spanish instructor and a chemistry instructor who, I'm going to share this with you. They've allowed me to share this with you. They initially had a ton of challenges. They were good friends and good colleagues. They still are. And that's the reason why they paired up. But they didn't realize until the fellowship how their disciplines could actually match up. They almost said, we can't do this. Chemistry and Spanish? What's going on? I don't think it'll work out. And it wasn't until the very end of the summer, at maybe even that third or fourth meeting, that they realized how easily compatible their disciplines were in creating meaningful renewable assignments for their students in their separate chemistry class and a separate Spanish class. And so let me just, like I said, the font is small, so I apologize. But the gist of the assignment is that the students are asked to watch a science-heavy recycling documentary, hence the chemistry component of it. And then they're asked to create a information brochure or flyer or something like that to increase awareness to a Spanish-speaking community, hence the Spanish discipline component. And so now let me share with you the result of that assignment, at least one result of that. This one student created a recycling brochure in Spanish, as you can probably tell, and this brochure incorporates some science terms and other science facts. So I think from here, this was a great example of how the two disciplines are intertwined onto this one student project. And then here's a side note for you. Let me just tell you about the student. We've asked her to present on a number of occasions with us, not only because her project is a nice product for uh, illustrating community engagement and the interdisciplinary component, but she said at that student showcase that this assignment made her change her career trajectory. That was jaw-dropping for us because we didn't expect that kind of impact. You know, most assignments you would think, just kind of going back to disposable assignments again, the kinds that you do and then you throw away, typically the impact is short term for most of our students. But she was not the only student who told us that their whole worldview has changed, or their career trajectory is going to change, or they're not going to change majors. And we just have to keep sharing that story because, again, it wasn't something we expected. But wow, the things that can come with a renewable assignment like this, where it gets our students engaging in some social action. Okay, so let me share with you one more set. Now, this is a trio we had last year between Montgomery College and Kwantlen Polytechnic University. And you see here at the top, there are 3 disciplines that were represented in this trio. We had an anthropology instructor, an urban ecosystems instructor, and a sustainable horticultural instructor. Now, this is not the actual assignment, so I'm not showing you the actual renewable assignment. Although if you go to the Montgomery College website that has the fellowship information, you can get his assignment off of that website. But I want you, my purpose of showing you this is for this purpose, is to show you that their renewable assignment, and at least this instructor's renewable assignment, turned him into a presenter in all these other spaces. Because of the work that he did in this fellowship, this Montgomery College faculty member received a ton of opportunities to talk about this work that stemmed from the fellowship. So you see how he's been able to get professional development opportunities of his own, but then he gets to share and offer professional development opportunities to other colleagues across the institution, but also across the state and across the country. So let me show you this one. So this instructor had a student who together presented on a number of occasions as well. This particular one that I have in front of you is an event that was sponsored by Open Education Global and the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources, CCCOER. And needless to say, when we see things like this, when we see that the efforts by the instructors and the students can live beyond the fellowship, I got to tell you, that makes my heart warm, because that means that they've been able to apply the work in other avenues. And more importantly, they're impacting more and more communities even after their fellowship time with us is over. Talk about having a life of its own, right? Which is what a renewable assignment it is by definition. So these instructors, and he is certainly not the only one, have been able to utilize the fellowship opportunity and just have it evolve into so many different ways that, again, we didn't even imagine could happen, but it has. All right, so I'm going to share with you this. This is the framework that the partnering institutions use to help our faculty fellows create renewable assignments. I do want to share with you that there are other frameworks out there. So this is not the only one. If you're thinking about creating a renewable assignments of your own, you might be seeing other models out there, and that's perfectly fine. But for the purpose of our workshop today, and for the purpose of the work and partnership that Montgomery College, Kwantlen Polytechnic University, and the Maricopa Community Colleges have, this is the framework that we generally use. Now, you don't have to write this down because I'm going to bring this list back up when you're in your breakouts. But let me just share with you the gist of the framework, okay? So as I mentioned before, we work in teams, faculty teams. Now, during the breakout workshops here today, you're not likely to be able to do that because some of you may not know each other, and that's okay. Though I do suggest that when you go back to your institution, perhaps consider pairing up with somebody within your institution or outside of your institution. But I do think it is important to pair up with somebody who's outside of your discipline, since that is the focus here. And that leads me to the next bullet point here, which is the interdisciplinary connections. This, like I said earlier, is so important to us because it really sends a message to our students, our communities, that it's important to work together in other fields, right? Just like how the labor market is intertwined, how communities are intertwined, even our own personal lives are intertwined. So our students should be getting that kind of practice in the classrooms through renewable assignments like this one, right? And then learning objectives. What do you want the students to learn from doing this assignment? And then the rationale. Why is this particular assignment being given? What will it do for the students in those various contexts, like in their major, in their career, in their civic life, in their personal life? And the next bullet point, please be explicit with your instructions. I'm sure many of you are already doing that, but there's always room to grow in this area. If we can be very specific with our key steps, so we can make sure that formatting requirements are explicitly stated and other tips for success are documented on the assignment. This really sets up our students for success from the very, very beginning, from the start. And then at the bottom of your document, be sure to put that Creative Commons licensing, just like the very first assignment that I shared with you that had the Creative Commons licensing at the bottom, because that is a major component of a renewable assignment. And again, you can always go to that website now or later during your breakout to help guide you as to what's the most appropriate license for you. Okay, so I'm going to now move into the breakouts. Before I do, let me give you some instructions. You will be randomly assigned. Each session will be about 30 minutes long. And I will share with you, you look at the 17 goals here, but I do want you to know that you're not tied to a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Because if you look at the 3 sub-bullet points that I have there, these are goals that I hope that we all as human beings have in our lives, both personally and professionally. But if you are interested in matching that up with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, you know which goal it matches it to. So for example, if you're interested in social inequalities, that matches up with goal number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. If you're interested in doing something on natural environment, that matches up with goals 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And if you're interested in more like social and economic sustainability, community sustainability, that matches up with goals 8, 9, 11, 16, and 17. Okay, so now let me give you the additional instructions. When you are in your breakout session, you'll be doing it in 2 parts. And the reason I do this is because it's funny how our brain works, right? Sometimes you have to tackle something large into piecemeals so that it becomes a little bit more digestible and it's more manageable to work through. So you're essentially going to do in under an hour what our faculty fellows do in one entire summer. So don't get discouraged if you can't, by the end of today's workshop, if you still don't have a renewable assignment in as a completed product. The point here is to at least begin the skeleton of a renewable assignment, and you can always continue working on that, on your off time after the fellowship is over. And like I said, I am always happy to connect with you by email, by Zoom at a later date if you would like to chat more about this. So in your first 30 minutes or so, these are the 4 things that I want you to work on. And here's a couple of housekeepings during your sessions. 1, use the space to have a dialogue with your facilitator as well as with one another on brainstorming, on coming up with some of this stuff, because that's the best way to learn is to have these conversations. So hopefully there's a lot of chatter around around many of these guidelines. But I also suggest that you have either a physical notepad if that's how you want to write things down, or your note-taking software, whether it's Microsoft Word or something else, so that you can begin typing away what your renewable assignment is going to look like. Okay. These are going to be given to you again in the breakout session, so you don't have to worry about writing these down. But if you want to just do a screenshot of this, feel free, go right ahead. So these are the things that you're going to be working on for the first 30 minutes or so. Okay. Looking at a sustainable development goal or one of those themes that we talked about earlier by going to this website, especially if you're not familiar with the goals. Then consider which discipline you'd like to incorporate into your renewable assignment. And I think this is where chatting with one another helps, because if you're not familiar with what other disciplines do in their courses or in their assignments, chat away and see how is it that another discipline is different from yours. And then decide on some learning objectives. What do you want your students to learn? And I also recommend it. We recommend in our fellowship that you include an introductory statement like this. It doesn't have to be so long, but something like this. And I'm gonna share this with you. When students read that first part, that first sentence, where it says you are a part of a global effort to increase access to education and empower students through open pedagogy, they get so excited. Especially because when they see this, they think, "Oh my gosh, this is not just a regular simple assignment. We're part of a big picture phenomenon here." And that really helps increase motivation and engagement. And there's a question in the chat. Are we doing this as a team or our own personal assignment? It really depends, because I imagine that most of you may not know each other. And so you might not want to do this as an official team, but you can work as a quote unquote loose team as far as brainstorming. But in the end, this might end up being your own personal assignment that you're going to deploy in your classes. But if it were a part of the actual fellowship, you'd be doing this as a team, and it would be interdisciplinary officially. I hope that helps to answer that question from Andrea. All right, so one more thing. Once that portion is over, you're going to move on to this portion. Your facilitator will help you, guide you along the way. You will work on these last couple of questions. Consider the rationale. What do you want your students to learn? What do you want your students to learn from this? And then again, like I said, just make sure that the instructions for your students are very clear, including things like formatting and tips for success. And then that last one might take some time, just because there are a lot of steps when you go to the website to choose which Creative Commons copyright license is most appropriate for you. Okay, and then after this is all over, just in about an hour or so, under an hour, I would say, we will come back, because I would love to hear some takeaways. We're not going to do any report outs officially, but I would love to hear some takeaways and what your plans are. And then we can wrap it up, and then we'll be